I want you to picture a poet. And be honest with me here.
Okay.
When I say important literary figure from the 20th century, what image pops into your head?
Oh, that's easy. It's someone in a tweed jacket, probably has elbow patches,
Right.
sitting in a dusty library, Oxford, Cambridge, Trinity College.
Totally detached from the real world, maybe sipping a sherry.
That's the archetype, isn't it? The ivory tower intellectual, the person who writes about life without ever really getting their hands dirty.
Exactly. But today we are talking about a man who takes that image and essentially throws a brick through the stained glass window of that ivory tower.
That is a very good way to put it.
We are talking about a man who spent his youth not in a lecture hall, but, in a ditch. A man who was an apprentice shoemaker, a subsistence farmer, and, this is my favorite part, the goalkeeper for his local Gaelic football team in rural Ireland.
A goalkeeper who, I might add, probably spent half the match composing verses in his head while waiting for the ball to come down the pitch.
Right. But here's the contradiction that hooks me. This same man, this rural cobbler, walks 80 miles
80 miles?
on foot just to knock on a door and meet a literary hero. He gets courted by British spies during World War II.
Which is a story in itself.
And then, in a bizarre twist of modern pop culture, his poetry ends up causing a backstage brawl involving Russell Crowe at the BAFTAs.
It is, without a doubt, one of the most volatile and fascinating trajectories in literary history. We are talking about Patrick Kavanagh.
We are.
And while the Russell Crowe connection is a great cocktail party story, and we will definitely get to that, the real mission of this deep dive is much more substantial.
We're looking at a stack of sources here. Biographies, critical essays, even some legal transcripts. And the narrative arc is just wild, but the core theme seems to be a battle over reality.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's a battle over how we see the world. Kavanagh basically dismantled the Celtic twilight.
Okay, you have to explain that. What was the Celtic twilight?
Well, you have to remember, before Kavanagh, the literary view of Ireland was dominated by W.B. Yeats and his circle. And it was all mist and fairies and noble peasants who spoke in ancient riddles. It was very romantic, but it was a fantasy.
And Kavanagh hated that.
He loathed it. He saw it as a lie. He wanted to replace that romanticism with something gritty, something he called the parochial.
Now, hold on. Parochial is usually an insult. If I call someone parochial, I'm saying they're small-minded, they don't know anything outside their tiny village.
And that is exactly where Kavanagh flips the script. He redefined that word completely. For him, being parochial was actually the highest form of art. It's a complex idea, and we're going to spend some time unpacking it because it really changes how you see your own life, not just his poetry.
Okay, so we've got libel suits, we've got lung cancer, a poetic rebirth on the banks of a canal, and we've got a gladiator fighting a TV producer.
It's quite a life.
Let's start at the very beginning, the soil and the shoemaker.
To really get Kavanagh, you have to smell the mud of Inniskeen, County Monaghan. He was born there on October 21st, 1904.
And when we say rural, we don't mean a nice cottage with Wi-Fi, we mean rural.
We mean subsistence. He was the fourth of 10 children. His father, James Kavanagh, was a cobbler, a shoemaker, and a small farmer. His mother, Bridget Quinn, ran the household. It was a hard, repetitive life.
The tough life.
But right off the bat, looking at the family history, there's a crack in the foundation. Kavanagh wasn't even their real name.
I saw this in the notes and I had to reread it. This involves his grandfather, right? A school teacher named Kavanagh.
That's right. His grandfather was a school teacher in the west of Ireland. But the records are frustratingly vague. They just mentioned a scandal.
A scandal? That sounds ominous.
It does. We don't know exactly what happened, but it was significant enough that he was forced to leave the area and he never taught in a national school again.
Wow. So it must have been serious for that time period.
It must have been. He moved to Tullamore, raised a family, but the shadow of that scandal must have followed them. Because when it came time for Patrick's baptism, the local priest in Inniskeen, he didn't just baptize him.
What do you mean?
He changed the family name in the registry. He changed Kavanagh to Kavanagh.
Wait, the priest just decided, I'm changing your name, and that was it.
Unilaterally.
Yeah.
Just wrote it in the book.
That speaks volumes about the power dynamic in rural Ireland at the turn of the century. The priest wasn't just a spiritual leader. He was like the administrator of your identity.
Absolutely. And that authority, the looming presence of the church, is something Patrick would wrestle with his entire life.
So despite this kind of strange start with the name, the family was industrious. They weren't destitute.
No, not at all. In fact, they believed in education as a way out. His brother Peter became a university professor. His sisters became teachers and nurses. They were all about upward mobility.
But Patrick, he zagged where they zigged.
He dropped out. He left school at age 13 after finishing 6th class. And that was it. That was the end of his formal education.
13 years old, so he's just thrown into the workforce.
He was apprenticed to his father. He sat on the bench mending shoes, and he went out into the fields to work the land. And this is where we have to address a very specific and frankly kind of dark definition Kavanagh had.
Okay.
He was a peasant. He lived a peasant's life, but he hated the mindset of the peasant.
This was the quote that really stuck out to me. He said, a peasant isn't just a farm laborer. He defined a peasant as all that mass of mankind which lives below a certain level of consciousness.
It's brutal, isn't it?
It sounds like he's describing a zombie movie. They live in the dark cave of the unconscious and they scream when they see the light. I mean, that is not a man who is happy with his neighbors.
It's Plato's cave. That's exactly what he's channeling. He felt that the people around him were just watching shadows on the wall. He later said that the real poverty of his childhood wasn't about the lack of money.
What was it then?
It was the lack of enlightenment. He called it the fog of unknowing.
The fog of unknowing. That's a terrifying phrase.
It is. He felt this fog was suffocating him. He felt trapped in a community that didn't examine itself, that didn't look up at the stars, that just worked and slept and prayed.
So you have this image of him. He's the goalkeeper for the Inniskeen Gaelic football team.
Which is such a great visual. The poet in the goalmouth.
But imagine him standing there, guarding the net, or bending over a boot in his father's shop, and internally, he is screaming. He is desperate to claw his way out of that fog. He wants consciousness. He wants the light.
That's the core of his early struggle.
And his ladder out of the fog wasn't school, because he'd already left. It had to be literature. But surely in 1920s, Inniskeen, access to books wasn't exactly easy.
No, it wasn't. He started by writing verses for the local papers, like the Dundalk Democrat and the Irish Independent. But they were, well, they were pretty amateur.
He was learning his craft.
He was. But the lightning bolt hit around 1929 or 1930 when he found a copy of the Irish Statesman.
And for those who don't know the landscape of Irish literature, the Irish Statesman was a big deal.
Huge. It was edited by George William Russell, who wrote under the pen name A.E. Russell was a titan. He was right there with W.B. Yeats leading the Irish literary revival. He was a mystic, a painter, a poet, and an editor. He was the gatekeeper.
So Kavanagh sees this magazine and he thinks, this is it. This is the door.
He starts sending poems to Russell. And at first, Russell rejects them.
Of course.
But, and this is to his eternal credit, he wrote back. He encouraged Kavanagh. He told him to keep submitting. And eventually, Russell published him.
And this leads us to the walk. This is the part of the story that feels like folklore, but it's real.
It's absolutely real.
The sources say in 1931, Kavanagh walked to Dublin to meet Russell. I checked the map. Monaghan to Dublin. That is 80 miles, 129 kilometers.
In December.
And he walked.
He walked. He couldn't afford the train fare. So he put on a pair of shoes, which, remember, as a cobbler, he probably made or fixed himself, and he just started walking.
That is a level of hunger I can barely comprehend. I get annoyed if my Uber takes 5 minutes. He walked 80 miles just to have a conversation.
It was a pilgrimage. He was walking out of the fog and towards the light, and it paid off. He knocked on Russell's door in Dublin.
And Russell let him in.
He didn't just open the door, he opened his library.
And this connects back to what we said earlier about the ivory tower. You'd expect a guy like Russell, who was obsessed with fairies and Irish mythology, to tell Kavanagh to read old Celtic legends.
He would, but he didn't.
What did he give him?
No. Russell was incredibly well-read. He gave Kavanagh books by Victor Hugo, Dostoevsky, Walt Whitman, Robert Browning. He gave him the world. He opened his mind.
And the most important detail in that reading list, for me, is the first book Kavanagh borrowed when he finally joined the Dundalk Library. It wasn't Yeats.
No. It was T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland.
Stop and think about that collision of worlds for a second.
It's massive.
You have a guy living in rural 1930s Ireland, a place that is very traditional, agrarian, almost 19th century in its rhythm. And he is reading The Wasteland, which is the ultimate fragmented, urban, modernist text. April is the cruelest month.
That friction is the spark that created Patrick Kavanagh. He's reading Eliot, and he realizes that poetry doesn't have to be about pretty sunsets or noble warriors. Eliot showed him that poetry could be disjointed. It could be ugly. It could be about the debris of life.
So he looks around his own life.
Exactly. He looked at his own life, the mud, the manure, the boredom of the potato field, And you realize, wait, I can write about this.
That leads to his first collection in 1936, Plowman and Other Poems. Macmillan publishes it. That's a major publisher. So he's made it, right? He's the shoemaker poet.
Well, he's published,
Yeah.
which is a huge step.
Right.
But the reception, it was patronizing.
How so?
The literary establishment didn't really know what to do with him. The Times literary supplement called him a poet of promise rather than achievement.
Ouch. The classic pat on the head.
And the Spectator gave him a real backhanded compliment, saying he wrote better prose than poetry. They treated him like a curiosity. Oh, look at the clever peasant who learned to rhyme. They wanted him to stay in his box.
They wanted the Celtic Twilight version of a peasant simple, happy, grateful. They didn't want the guy who reads Dostoevsky and hates the fog of unknowing.
Precisely. And Kavanagh, being Kavanagh, didn't handle that pigeonholing well.
I can imagine.
He decided to bypass the Dublin scene and try his luck in London directly. In 1938, he goes over there, spends about 5 months, and out of this period comes a book called The Green Fool.
Now, this book is described as a loosely autobiographical novel, and I get the sense that loosely is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Very heavy lifting. He reinvents himself a bit, plays up the innocent abroad angle.
Okay.
But the book is significant for 2 reasons. 1, it was actually well received internationally. But 2, it caused him a spectacular amount of legal trouble.
This story actually made me laugh out loud. It involves Oliver St. John Gogarty.
Yes, it does.
Now, for listeners who don't know, Gogarty was a massive figure in Dublin. He was a surgeon, a poet, a senator, a wit. He was the model for Buck Mulligan in James Joyce's Ulysses.
He was the ultimate insider. Wealthy, sharp-tongued, part of the elite. In The Green Fool, Kavanagh describes visiting Gogarty's home. It's a passing anecdote.
What does he say?
He writes, I mistook Gogarty's white road maid for his wife or his mistress. I expected every poet to have a spare wife.
I expected every poet to have a spare wife. I mean, come on. That is clearly a joke about the bohemian reputation of poets.
It's a joke. And frankly, it's a pretty funny one. But Gogarty did not have a sense of humor about this specific thing.
What did he do?
He sued Kavanagh for libel.
He sued over a joke.
He took particular offense to the coupling of the words wife and mistress in the same sentence as his name. He argued it defamed his character.
That seems incredibly thin-skinned for a guy who hung out with James Joyce.
It was a class issue, really. The wealthy surgeon putting the upstart peasant back in his place.
Did he win?
And Gogarty won. He was awarded £100 in damages.
Which, for a struggling poet in 1938, must have been a fortune.
It was ruinous. It was a disaster. But what I love is Kavanagh's reaction to the book's reception in general. While he's getting sued, other people in Ireland are claiming the book is anti-Catholic.
Which is ironic given how devout his upbringing was.
But did Kavanagh apologize? Did he retreat? No. He demanded that the book be displayed prominently in Dublin bookshop windows. He had this streak of defiance. If you push him, he pushes back harder. He wanted the controversy.
So he's burnt bridges with Gogarty. He's got a reputation as a wild card. And then 1939 hits. He moves to Dublin permanently just as the world catches fire.
The emergency. That's what they call WWII in neutral Ireland. And this period is crucial for understanding Kavanagh's psychology. He arrives in Dublin expecting it's a lawn. He thinks he's going to find high conversation, brilliant minds, a community of artists.
And instead, what did he find?
He finds what he called dandies, journalists, and civil servants playing at art. He was incredibly disillusioned. He felt the Dublin literary scene was fake. He felt they were posing.
He even made a comment that smuggling on the Monaghan border would have been a better career choice during the war than writing in Dublin.
Economically, he was probably right. Smuggling was very profitable.
Yeah.
Poetry, not so much.
Right.
But his social connections during this time did lead to one of the weirdest episodes in his life, the British spy story.
I love this. This involves John Betjeman, who would later become the poet laureate of the UK.
Yes. At the time, Benjamin was in Dublin as a press attaché for the British government. But his real job was British intelligence.
He was a spy.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
His job was to gauge Irish public opinion and try to influence it toward the Allies. And he identified Kavanagh as a potential recruit.
Why Kavanagh? I mean, he's a loose cannon. He's getting sued for libel. Why would you want him as an asset?
Because Kavanagh was an oddity. He was an outsider on the inside. He moved in elite circles. He knew the writers and the politicians. But he was also from the country. He knew the farmers. He was politically ambiguous.
So he could move between worlds.
Benjamin was impressed by his wide social range. He thought Kavanagh could be a conduit to understanding what real Irish people were thinking.
Can you imagine Patrick Kavanagh, 007?
It's a hilarious image. Thankfully, it didn't go anywhere. Kavanagh wasn't cut out for espionage. He was too busy channeling his energy into what critics now consider his absolute masterpiece. In 1942, he published The Great Hunger.
Now, when I first saw that title on the outline, I assumed it was about the historical famine, the potato famine of the 1840s.
That is the intentional echo. He wants you to think of that. But the poem isn't about history. It's about the spiritual and emotional famine of the 1940s.
Okay.
It's a long poem, over 1,000 lines, about a bachelor farmer named Patrick McGuire.
And this is not the Celtic twilight farmer, is it?
God, no. This is the anti-Yeats. There are no happy maidens dancing at the crossroads. It's about a man who stays on the farm to look after his aging mother. He delays marriage. He delays life. And before he knows it, he's 65, he has no wife, no children, and his life has just evaporated.
It sounds incredibly bleak.
It is bleak. It deals with sexual repression, loneliness, the crushing, repetitive weight of the seasons. There's a line where he talks about the apocalypse of clay. The soil isn't nurturing, it's a tyrant.
And this poem was so raw, so honest about the misery of rural life that it attracted the attention of the police.
It did. The poem was published in a magazine called Horizon. There were strong rumors that the Gardaí, the Irish police, visited the magazine's offices and even seized copies.
Was that true?
Kavanagh later denied the seizure happened, but he confirmed that two Gardaí visited his home to investigate.
Because of a poem, that seems wild to us now. What were they investigating?
They were investigating under the Special Powers Act. The suspicion was likely obscenity or indecency. You have to remember, 1940s Ireland was deeply conservative and censorial. A poem discussing masturbation, sexual frustration, and the despair of a good Catholic farmer was seen as a threat to the moral fabric of the nation.
It threatened the self-image of the country.
Exactly. But artistically, it was his peak. He had finally done it. He had taken the fog of unknowing and turned it into high art. He gave a voice to the silent misery of the rural bachelor. Critics later called it a work of mythic intensity.
So he's written his masterpiece. He's 38 years old. He's established himself as the real deal. You'd think, okay, now comes the tenure, the respect, the easier life.
You would think. But Kavanagh had a tragic talent for self-sabotage. The next decade, from 1945 to 1954, is a slow, painful slide into chaos. We call this section of his life the nadir.
The low point. He's working as a gossip columnist. That seems beneath him.
He needed the money. He wrote for the Irish press under the pseudonym Piers Plowman. He was also a film critic. But his personality was deteriorating. The sources use the word quixotic, which is a polite way of saying he was impossible.
What was he doing?
He was drinking heavily, he was becoming disheveled, he had a habit of roaring at people in pubs and turning on the very friends who tried to help him.
And this culminates in the second great legal battle of his life, the Leader libel case in 1954. This feels like the sequel to the Gogarty trial, but much darker.
Much darker. In 1952, a magazine called The Leader published an anonymous profile of Kavanagh, and it was brutal. It painted him as an alcoholic sponger who just hung around Dublin bars trying to be famous.
And Kavanagh, remembering that he had to pay up when he libeled Gogarty, probably thought, aha, now I can sue them and get a payout.
Exactly. He thought he'd get an easy settlement. He thought he could turn the tables, but he miscalculated badly.
How so?
The Leader didn't fold. They decided to fight. And they hired a barrister named John A. Costello.
Wait, the John A. Costello?
The former and future Taoiseach Prime Minister of Ireland. Imagine getting into a legal dispute, and the other side hires the Prime Minister to cross-examine you.
That is a mismatch of epic proportions.
Costello was one of the sharpest legal minds in the country. Kavanagh took the stand, hoping to charm the jury or outwit the lawyer, but Costello absolutely destroyed him.
Really?
He went through Kavanagh's own writings, his own behavior. He painted Kavanagh as a hypocrite who dished out abuse but couldn't take it. He tore his credibility to shreds.
So he loses the case?
He loses. And it wasn't just a financial loss. It was a public humiliation. He was exposed. There's even this bizarre little twist to it.
What's that?
Years later, Costello and Kavanagh actually became good friends. Kavanagh even voted for him.
That's a very Kavanagh thing to do.
It really is. But the story gets worse.
And then, as if the universe were writing a tragedy, immediately after the trial, he gets sick.
Immediately.
Yeah.
He was diagnosed with lung cancer.
Wow. Talk about kicking a man when he's down.
He was admitted to the hospital and had a lung removed.
So let's take stock. It's 1954. Kavanagh is 50 years old. He has lost his reputation in a humiliating trial. He is broke. He has just lost a lung. He is lying in a hospital bed. By all conventional logic, this is the end of the story. This is where he fades away.
It feels like the end. But this is actually where the story pivots. This is where we get the Canal Bank rebirth.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this is the moment where Kavanagh seems to find peace, and it leads to his most important philosophical idea.
While he was recovering from the surgery, he was weak, he couldn't drink, he couldn't shout. He spent the hot summer of 1955 just sitting on the banks of the Grand Canal in Dublin, just sitting.
Doing nothing.
Doing nothing. And in that stillness, stripped of his ambition, stripped of his arrogance, he found a new way of seeing the world. He wrote a poem about it, lines written on a seat on the Grand Canal, Dublin.
This is one of his most famous poems.
It is. The opening lines are iconic. Oh, commemorate me where there is water, canal water preferably, so stilly greeny at the heart of summer.
Canal water, preferably. I love that modification. Not a mighty ocean, not a rushing river, just a man-made ditch in the middle of the city.
It's the celebration of the ordinary. And this is where his philosophy of the parochial versus the provincial crystallizes. We tease this in the intro, but we need to really explain it because it's his legacy.
Right, because to modern ears, parochial sounds bad. It sounds small. And provincial sounds, well, maybe a bit similar.
Kavanagh flipped the definitions. For him, provincial was the negative term.
Okay, so what did provincial mean to him?
To be provincial meant you're constantly looking over your shoulder at the metropolis. You're in Dublin, but you're looking at London. You're in New York, but you're checking what Paris is doing. You don't trust your own experience. You think real life is happening somewhere else, so you try to copy it to be sophisticated.
So the Dublin literary types he hated, the dandies, they were provincial because they were just imitating what was cool in London.
Exactly. They were insecure. But to be parochial, in Kavanagh's view, was to have total trust in the local. It meant understanding that the life you live right where you are contains all the drama and truth of the universe.
He had a quote about this, right? All great civilizations are based on the parish.
Yes. He believed that if you went deep enough into your own small corner of the world, your own parish, you would find the universal. You didn't need to go to London or Rome to find art. Art was in the soil of Inniskeen. Art was in the green water of the Grand Canal.
That is a really empowering idea. It's basically saying, stop looking at Instagram to see what life should look like. Look at the bench you're sitting on.
Exactly. And you see the influence of this everywhere. Seamus Heaney, the Nobel Prize winner who came after Kavanagh, said that this distinction, the parochial versus the provincial liberated Irish poets,
How so?
it gave them permission to write about their own lives without feeling inferior. Kavanagh told them, your life matters. Your mud matters.
So Kavanagh is recovering. He has this new philosophy. Does his career recover?
It does. It wasn't instant. In 1956, he had a setback when Macmillan rejected his new poems. He was depressed again.
Of course.
But a man named Patrick Swift intervened. Swift was an artist, a writer, and he arranged for the poems to be published in a magazine called Nimbus.
And this was the turning point.
It was. This collection included the Canal poems, and suddenly the critics woke up. They realized he wasn't just the peasant poet or the alcoholic sponger. He was a master. He was writing with a clarity and a grace that he never had before.
And around this time, we have to talk about On Raglan Road. It's probably his most famous work to the general public because of the song.
It's a beautiful story of unrequited love. The poem was originally titled Dark-Haired Miriam Ran Away, published way back in 1946.
So before the cancer, before the rebirth.
Way before. It's about a woman named Hilda Moriarty. Kavanagh was infatuated with her. She was a medical student, much younger, beautiful.
And he knew it was doomed.
Oh, he did. The poem begins. On Raglan Road, on an autumn day, I met her first and knew that her dark hair would weave a snare that I might one day rue.
I saw the danger, yet I walked along the enchanted way. It's heartbreaking. He walks into the trap willingly.
Years later, Kavanagh was in a pub in Dublin, the Bailey, and he met Luke Kelly.
Of the Dubliners. A legend.
The legendary folk singer. Kavanagh told Luke Kelly that he should sing this poem. He suggested setting it to the traditional air, Fain Geel an Lay, the dawning of the day.
And the rest is history.
Luke Kelly's version is definitive. You can hear the gravel in his voice that matches the gravel in Kavanagh's life, but it's been covered by everyone.
Van Morrison, Sinead O'Connor.
Mark Knopfler, Ed Sheeran. It's entered the DNA of Irish culture.
It really has. So he has this late success. He's finding his footing again. And he even finds love.
He does. He married Catherine Barry Maloney in April 1967. She was a significant figure herself, the niece of Kevin Barry, the famous Irish Republican martyr. They set up a home on Waterloo Road in Dublin. It seemed like he was finally going to have some stability.
But sadly, the clock had run out.
It had. Later that same year, in 1967, there was a premiere of a play adaptation of his novel, Tarry Flynn. It was at the town hall in Dundalk, near his home.
So, a homecoming of sorts.
A real celebration. Kavanagh attended, he was a guest of honor, but he fell ill right there at the premiere.
That feels almost too scripted, dying right as his work is being celebrated on stage in his home county.
It's poetic, in a dark way. He died a few days later, on November 30th, 1967. He was buried back in Inniskeen.
So that's the life, from the shoemaker's bench to the canal bench. But the afterlife of Patrick Kavanagh is just as interesting. We mentioned Seamus Heaney earlier.
Heaney is the key witness here. He credited Kavanagh with having a transformative effect on Irish culture. He said Kavanagh liberated the gifts of the poets who came after him.
What did he mean by that?
Before Kavanagh, you felt you had to write like Gatesmithic, grand, distant. Kavanagh made it okay to just be Irish, to be ordinary, to write about your own parish.
But his legacy pops up in the weirdest places. We have to go back to the Russell Crowe story. We teased it. Now give us the details.
Okay, so it's 2002. The BAFTAs, the British Academy Film Awards. Russell Crowe wins Best Actor for A Beautiful Mind.
I remember this.
He gets up on stage in his tuxedo, and he decides to quote a 4-line poem by Patrick Kavanagh called Sanctity.
Do you have the quote?
To be a poet and not know the trade, to be a lover and repel all women.
Twin ironies by which great saints are made, the agonizing pincer jaws of heaven.
It's a profound quote. It's about how suffering and failure make you a saint. But the BBC, who was broadcasting the show, cut that part of the speech out.
Why? To save time.
Yeah, to save time for the news or something.
And Crowe didn't appreciate the edit.
To put it mildly, he reportedly confronted the producer, Malcolm Gary, at a dinner afterwards. Allegedly, he shoved him against a wall and used some very colorful language, shouting about how dare they cut the poetry.
It's so Kavanagh, isn't it? A brawl over a poem.
Kavanagh would have absolutely loved it. The idea of a Hollywood gladiator fighting a TV executive in defense of his 4 lines of verse. It's the perfect tribute.
And speaking of weird tributes, tell me about the Disney World connection, because I genuinely thought you were joking when I read this in the notes.
I am not joking. If you go to Disney Springs, formerly Downtown Disney, in Orlando, Florida, there's a massive Irish pub called Raglan Road.
Okay, that makes sense.
And right outside that pub, there's a bronze statue of Patrick Kavanagh sitting on a bench.
No way.
Yes way. Tourists in Mickey Mouse ears sit next to him and take selfies.
The man who hated the provincial impulse to copy others, the man who wrote about the grim reality of potato farming and the crushing poverty of the fog of unknowing, is now a statue in the most commercial, sanitized, artificial place on earth.
It is the ultimate irony. But then again, remember his request?
Right.
He wanted to be commemorated where there is water. Florida has plenty of water. Maybe he'd appreciate the absurdity of it.
True. And back in Dublin, there is the real seat on the Grand Canal.
Yes. It's a place of pilgrimage now. Every St. Patrick's Day, people gather there. They read his poems. They have a drink. It's exactly what he asked for. Brother, commemorate me thus beautifully. And we do.
It's a beautiful legacy. So as we wrap this up, what does this all mean for us? Why does a shoemaker from 1930s Monaghan matter to someone listening to a podcast in 2026?
I think Kavanagh matters because he validated the ordinary life. He took the fog of unknowing and showed us how to clear it. He showed us that you don't need to look for myths or fairies or go to London or New York to find magic. The magic is in the street, in the canal, in the potato field.
He grounded us. He brought literature down from the misty mountains and put it in the mud where we actually live.
And in doing so, he made it real. He made it universal.
I want to leave the listener with a thought today. We live in a world that is obsessed with being global. We're connected to everyone, everywhere, all the time. We're constantly scrolling, looking at what's happening on the other side of the world, feeling like that is where real life is.
In Kavanagh's terms, we are very provincial. We are constantly looking outward, insecure that we are missing out.
Exactly. So here's the question. In this age of hyperconnectivity, is Kavanagh's idea of the parochial, knowing your own small corner deeply, truly understanding your own immediate reality, is that actually the only way to be unique? Is looking inward at your own parish the only way to really say something to the world?
A man innocently dabbles in words and rhymes and finds that it is his life.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.